Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Efficient Eric. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do like a little mini limited set review. We are not going to be going over every single card, for sure. We're just going to be doing commons and uncommons that you can go for because you can never just expect to actually open the rares that you want. So we're going to do that. Firstly, sorry that there hasn't been as many videos. As I said in earlier videos, I'm a college kid, so it is getting a little harder to record, but I do still want to put out at least one video a week, which is what I'm trying to do. And also, Magic the Gathering Arena is kind of screwing us that they're not giving us ranked draft until January 31st. But that's fine. We'll get through it. I'm sure we will. And remember, if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. That being said, let's get started. We're going to go over, in my opinion, some of the top cards in every color. Again, the set's very new, so some of these are interchangeable. Like, you could replace these with each other. Like, maybe first and second might be a little interchangeable, as you see, but and also please bear in mind this also depends on the deck you're playing. Certain decks will value other cards more than others, which is also what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be doing top 5 in each color, and then we're going to be doing each uncommon signpost card in each color pair and the top 3 cards in those color pairs, in my opinion. Again, maybe not in the perfect order. If you guys disagree, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking, because I haven't drafted every color pair yet, so I can't say I'm perfect. But I do think I have some solid opinions that you all might actually benefit from if you're trying to draft Theros for the first time. So, to start off, my number 1 card in white, and by the way, I'm just going to have Scryfall in front of me. I'm going to read each card as we get to it, so I can tell you guys exactly what it does. The first card we have, I think the best card in white in terms of commons and uncommons, Banishing Light. This card is so good. So really quickly, I'm going to read it. 3 mana, it's 2 and a white, Banishing Light, an enchantment. When Banishing Light enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. So basically, this is just the best white removal in the set. There might be better stuff at rare. I'm not actually 100% sure about that. But in terms of common and uncommon, it's an enchantment, so it hits all your constellation synergies. It exiles any non-land permanent that an opponent controls. And it's only 3 mana. and it exiles, so it gets rid of any escape cards as well. The only downside I see with this card is that enchantment removal is main deckable in this set due to cards like this. So that is the one thing you have to be aware of. But still, it's even if that happened, you're still getting value out of it. This card is a house, so that is easily first pickable. Secondly, the next best card in white, I have Dreadful Apathy. So I'm going to read that for you. Dreadful Apathy costs, again, 2 and a white. Enchantment, but specifically Aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature cannot attack or block, so essentially it's a 3 mana pacifism, except it has this line of text attached to it as well. For another 2 and a white, you can exile the enchanted creature. Mind you, this does not exile Dreadful Apathy, it exiles the creature, and then this goes into your graveyard, meaning if you have any sort of enchantment recursion, you can bring it back again and keep exiling stuff. Again, this card, it hits all the relevant creatures. If you're afraid they're going to be main decking enchantment removal, you can exile it when you have the mana up for it. And in certain archetypes, like in black-white, you can get auras back from the graveyard, meaning that this card gets stupid really quickly. And there's even, so for example, if you're playing Flicker of Fate, you can activate the exile enchant creature clause, right? And then with that on the stack, at instant speed, play Flicker of Fate, exile the enchantment, then that'll resolve, it'll exile the creature, but then Flicker of Fate on your, oh, sorry. First of all, let me read Flicker of Fate for you guys, my apologies. So it's a 2 mana instant, 1 in a white, so it's in the same color, it's not that ridiculous to get a copy of it. Exile target creature or enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So, when you flicker this after you've activated the exile enchanted creature part, it'll exile and then come back under the battlefield, and when it enters the battlefield, you can choose a new target for it. So you can repeatedly hit people with Dreadful Apathy. Again, gets stupid really, really quickly. Next up, we're going to be going with, for number 3, let me find it here. It is Heliod's Pilgrim. So, really quick, Heliod's Pilgrim is 2 and a white. Again, there are a lot of 3-mana cards. Creature, Human Cleric at common. When Heliod's Pilgrim, enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura card. Mind you, aura, not just any enchantment. Reveal it, and then put it into your hand and shuffle your library. So at first you might be like, why is a 3-mana 1/2 that's getting you an aura that good? In this set, again, depending on what color pair you're playing, but for the most part, this is 3-mana 1/2 that tutors your removal. Can you imagine you 3-mana 1/2 and go get your Dreadful Apathy with this? Or if you're playing white-black, you go get your Myers Grasp. This card is awesome. Like in most decks, it's doing what it wants to do, especially in decks that, I mean, if you want to be playing Heliod Pilgrim, it's doing what you want it to do. And then in worst case scenario, you can go get your Commanding Presences, you can go get your other auras that maybe aren't removal but are still very good. So again, this is just the premier 3-drop in white right now. Excuse me. But do be aware, have common sense as well. If you're in pack 3 and this gets passed to you and you're like, oh man, I should take this Heliod's Pilgrim, but then you look and you actually don't have any good auras in your deck, it's not good, so just keep that kind of stuff in mind. Don't be picking up cards just because in general they're good if they don't fit well into your deck. Next up, we have Sunmane Pegasus at number 4 for me. I know this is a little debatable, but this card has done so much work for me. It's hard to race because you can give it Vigilance and Lifelink, and then it blocks because it has Vigilance. It's a 2/3 flyer. First, let me read it. So, it costs 3 and a white for a creature Pegasus at common. It is a 2/3 flyer, and then has, for 1 and a white, Sunmane Pegasus gains Vigilance and Lifelink until end of turn. I just think this is like your most solid 4-drop in white. I love this card. If they don't deal with it, you start dealing 2, gaining 2 in the era turn. If you put any auras on it, like Sentinel's Eyes, or Commanding Presence, or any aura that makes it better, it gets really out of hand really quickly. Obviously, we're not going over rares, but I happened to actually do a sealed run where I had Heliod and a Sunmane Pegasus. So he kept getting lifelink on his own and putting counters on himself, becoming a bigger and bigger threat that had to be answered. Great card. Even without Heliod, still a great card. And then lastly, number 5 in white, we're going to be doing the card, my apologies. I'm trying to find it here. It is Revoke Existence. This card, okay, so in any other set, Revoke Existence would be a sideboard card and a not great one at that. In this set, it does 2 things. First of all, it's 2-mana removal for any enchantment creature, which there are a lot of enchantment creatures in this set. You will find targets for this. If they happen to have an artifact that's pissing you off, like a Shadow Spear, it gets rid of it for 2 mana. It exiles, meaning 2 things. It doesn't, if it's an escape creature, they can't escape it. If it's not an escape creature, it can't become escape fodder. Like, they can't exile it later to try to make an escape creature come back. They can't. It's in exile. And lastly, if you're playing against the gods, this is how you deal with it. 2 mana, exile any god, because it's an exile effect. So you start hitting someone's Heliod, someone's Erebos, someone's Perforos with this, someone's Thassa with this. It gets... Okay, that's why I like it. So, at first, when I first looked at it, I didn't know how playable it was going to be. I knew there were a lot of enchantment creatures. Now you easily you want to main deck at least 1. I happily main deck 2. After 2, if you want to do 3, like, that gets a little, like, maybe you just want a 2-drop creature instead. But I'm playing 1 or 2 of these, and happily, so. With that being said, we're going to be moving on to blue cards. So, number 1 for blue, surprisingly enough, I have Ichthyomorphosis, right? Ichthyomorphosis is a... Okay, so it costs 2 and a blue, enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a blue fish with base power and toughness 0-1. There have been effects like this in previous sets, like Kasmina's Transmutation, that are not great. Why? Because they're 2 mana or 3 mana or whatever, but they leave behind a 1/1 with no abilities. The difference between a 1/1 and an 0/1 is huge. A 1/1 is a chump blocker and can participate later in a multiple block where actually they might be of use. And 0/1 doesn't do anything. It just sits there. It's sacrifice fodder if you want, but like this is the best removal you're gonna get in blue, in my opinion. I mean, unless you have like counter spells and stuff, but I don't like that as much. It's okay. So this just deals with a lot, and it becomes incredibly useful. This is like the best removal you're gonna get. Just, I shouldn't have to go into too much of why this is a good card. Next, we're going to go into our number 2, which I personally have as Thirst for Meaning. So Thirst for Meaning costs 2 in a blue, an instant at common, draw 3 cards. Then discard 2 cards unless you discard an enchantment card. Guys, with the amount of enchantments in this set, I have casted this card multiple times, with it being the last card in my hand, and drawn into an enchantment that is okay at best, and discarded it. So essentially 3 mana instant speed. It's actually a little better than draw 2, because draw 2 is drawing 2. Draw 3, discard 1 is draw 3, keep the best 2 out of 3. So it is slightly better than draw 2, though it is not as good as draw 3 for sure. So this card has been performing wonderfully for me at instant speed. You're keeping it up. You can keep it up with a counter. So like if they play something scary, you counter it. If not, end of turn, Thirst for Meaning. This is a great card. I'm loving it right now. I'd play easily 2 or 3 of these and be very happy about it with any deck that has a good amount of enchantments in it. And then number 3 for blue, I have One with the Stars. This card is 3 in a blue for an enchantment aura. Again, something else you can search out with Heliod's Pilgrim, by the way. Enchant creature or enchantment. Enchanted permanent is an enchantment and loses all other card types. So it still has its abilities, but it is no longer a creature. And then it sounds weird, like why would you enchant an enchantment and make it an enchantment and nothing else? It hits gods, that's why. So if you have a god but they don't have the devotion for it and you hit it with this, it just permanently stays as an enchantment and never becomes the creature even if they have the devotion. So this is just the 4 mana removal. I like this card just because I will say, blue I feel like is very, like, all the commons and uncommons get pretty close in power level. Like, there's none that are like, wow, this card is, like, insanely better than I was expecting. Most of them are kind of in the same range. So I feel like just 4 mana removal for most creatures is good enough to be in the top 5 that you should be taking it when you see it more often than not. After that, I have Omen of the Sea. So one of the Omen cycle. The blue one is very powerful. So it is 1 in the blue for an enchantment at common. It has Flash. When Omen of the Sea enters the battlefield, scry 2, then draw a card. Then it also says, like all the Omens do, 2 in a blue, sacrifice Omen of the Sea, scry 2. So basically, on turn 2, it's a card draw effect that puts lands into your hand or creatures into your hand, depending on what you need in your opener. Or in the late game is draw cards and then scry 2 to ensure your next draws are also good. This card just does work in terms of enchantment synergies. It hits all your constellation synergies. It has Flash, so you can hold it up with a counter and then do this. It just kind of does everything you want to be doing in blue. And on top of that, there's another card, probably be talking about it later, called Shimmerwing Chimera. It's a 4 mana 3/2 flyer that it's the one that bounces enchantments back to your hand, so you can repeatedly scry 2 and draw a card. You know, you can see how that would get stupid. So, big fan of Omen of the Sea. I think it's one of the best blue playables. After that, we have Witness of Tomorrows. So, Witness of Tomorrows is it costs 4 in a blue. It's an enchantment creature Sphinx. So, it's an enchantment creature for your enchantment synergies at common. It is a 3/4 flyer that says 3 in a blue, scry 1. So this card is just solid top end. It's a 5 mana 3/4 flyer, which isn't what you really want to be paying, but you know, you put anything on it, it becomes a really good threat. Even as a 3/4, it can be a threat in the air. And on their end step, you can keep up instants or just start scrying into your next cards that it'll make your draws much smoother, get you what you want into your hand. that kind of stuff. So just, again, solid. I like this as a top end in blue if you don't have anything like any rares at the top end. This will do just fine. Next, we're going to go to top black cards. So in black, for number 1, I have Drag to the Underworld. So Drag to the Underworld is 2 and 2 black mana for an instant and uncommon. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is your devotion to black. And then the actual text is destroy target creature. So, in the worst case scenario, this is a 4 mana instant destroy target creature, which is already incredibly playable in draft. You always play this card. Now, if you can get it down to the 2, because you'll never get it below 2, by the way, you can never make this card free. You always have to pay the double black. But when you get this card to 2 black to destroy target creature, you are doing what you want to be doing. That is incredibly efficient. Like, that is like standard level removal. Like, constructed removal is 2 mana destroy target creature. So, again, this card is great. You should be picking it. It's easily first pickable. This is a sign. If you get past this, it is a sign that black is wide open. There you go. Next up, I have Pharika Spawn. So, Pharika Spawn, let me find it really quickly. Okay. It is 3 and a black for a creature Gorgon at uncommon. It is a 3/4. And the text on it says, escape for 5 and a black and exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Pharika Spawn escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. Right there, this is already playable. A 4 mana 3/4 that then escapes for 6 and 3 other cards and comes back as a 5/6 is playable and good. Like, you would be playing that. Then it also has this text. When it enters the battlefield this way through escaping, each opponent sacrifices a non-Gorgon creature. This is an amazing card. So basically, it has like a Pharika's Libation, essentially, attached to a 5/6 body when it escapes. Yeah, you're playing this card as, again, another surefire sign that black is open. I feel like black is very deep. There are a lot of playable good cards in black. So if you're seeing these, black is open. After that, we have Mire's Grasp. So Mire's Grasp is 1 and a black for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -3/-3. This is just your bread and butter removal. 2 mana, deal 3 damage. A target. It's not deal 3. It's -3/-3, which is technically different. But 2 mana, kill, a 3-drop, maybe even a 4-drop. What makes this card crazy is A, constellation synergies, if you have any. Enchantment synergies, if you have any. B, there is ways to recur these cards from your graveyard. If you hit something with Mire's Grasp and then recur it later and kill something else, yeah, that's insane. Yeah, that is what you want to be doing in Limited. Even if you do it, even as a 2 mana -3/-3, it's good. After that, if you can recur it once, you're incredibly happy with how this card's done for you. So again, just great all-around card. Next up, we have Final Death. So Final Death is 4 and a black for an instant, exile target creature. Again, this card is just playable. It is just good. 5 mana, destroy target creature is playable. 5 mana, instant speed, exile target creature with escape is a huge mechanic. And if someone plays a god and it becomes a creature, you can't do it before then. But if it becomes a creature, you exile it. This card does everything you want it to in this set. It fits in perfectly with the set. You take multiples of these and are very happy about it. Finally, for number 5, I have good old Gary, Grey Merchant of Asphodel. So in case you don't know what Gary does, he is 3 black for a creature zombie, now at uncommon rather than common. He was printed at common in the last set. When Grey Merchant of Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. So for if you're a newer player, if you see this card, you might be like, okay, it's a 5 mana 2/4 that might drain for 2 or 3. That is not what this card is. I have played multiple decks that I've been at 8, 9 life, and they go, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, you lose 9 life. Do you have a response or you lose? And I'm like, oh my god. I just lost a 9 life to a 5-drop immediately. This card is great. Mind you, if you're in a 2-color deck, it's not as good. Like, obviously, you want to play Grey Merchant as heavy black as you possibly can. But even if you're kind of half and half, he is still absolutely playable as a nice finisher. He'll do the damage you need. He'll gain you a little bit too. So, and this is a devotion synergy. So if you have other devotion synergies, you're playing him 1000%. Now we're moving on to red. So for red, the number one card I have is Iroa's Blessing. So 3 in a red for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. When Iroa's Blessing enters the battlefield, it does 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. So, again, I want you guys to know, if this card said 4 mana, sorcery speed, when Iroa's Blessing enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, you would still play this card. Now, put on top of that it's an enchantment for an enchantment synergies you might have, and it just also gives the creature a +1/+1 bonus. This card's insane. Mind you, you have to be very careful. There's 1 mana Stern Dismissal that'll bounce your creature, so if it gets bounced out from under this, you end up losing it, so that sucks. But it's still great. Like, you just have to play around that. You have to be careful of it. But still, 4 mana deal 4, give the creature +1/+1, and activate all my enchantment synergies, you're playing this 1000% of the time. Number 1 card in red. For number 2, I have Fateful End. So, let me find that super quick. My deepest apologies. Fateful End is 2 in a red for an instant and uncommon. Fateful End deals 3 damage to any creature, to any target. My apologies, is a big difference. To any target, scry 1. This is, again, bread and butter removal. 3 mana, deal 3, scry 1. But to any target, so it can go face if they're at 1, 2, or 3 life. It can hit a planeswalker. It can hit a creature. And it's at instant speed, so you can hold it up on their turn. Again, you play the shit out of this card 1000% of the time. So, just a good card. After that, we have Omen of the Forge. So, another one of the Omen cycle. 1 and a red for an enchantment at common with flash. When Omen of the Forge enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. Then it has the Omen clause, 2 in a red, sack it to scry 2. So this is, again, more bread and butter removal. I think, honestly, Fateful End is better for the most part. But that depends. If you have a lot of 3-drops, you should take Omen. If you have a lot of 2-drops, you should take Fateful End. But 2 mana, deal 2 damage is good. And then it sits around. Like, if you're doing red-black sacrifice, you can sacrifice it later. If you're just playing like a longer-term game, you end up in the long game, you just sacrifice it, scry 2. So this is just a great common in red. You should be playing it. I'd probably play 2 or 3 copies. Yeah, the 4th copy, I start to get a little like, I would just rather have creatures at that point. After Omen of the Forge, I have, at number 4, Anax, Hardened in the Forge. Hardened in the Forge. He is 1 red for a legendary enchantment creature demigod at uncommon. Anax's power is equal to your devotion to red, so on his own, he's a 2/3. Whenever Anax or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 red satyr creature token with this creature can't block. If the creature had power 4 or greater, create 2 of those tokens instead. So Anax is on his own a 3 mana 2/3, even though most of the time he'll be more like a 3 mana 3/3, 3 mana 4/3. And if they kill him or any of your other creatures, you get 1/1 tokens. He's just good. He protects against Shatter the Sky. If you're playing white and they have Shatter the Sky, you play him 1000% of the time because it punishes them really badly for that. You get your 1/1s out of the deal. And he's essentially a 3 mana 3/3 that, fine, but you have to kill him. Because any other thing that you kill, I'm gonna get value out of. So, and by the way, he is especially playable in red-black. I'm probably going to be going over that later. Let me see. Yep, I'm going to be going over that later, but he's especially playable there. So, love him. Solid number 3, or what do I have him as, number 4? Yeah, it's number 4. Lastly, number 5. This is a little debatable. I mean, all of these are debatable, obviously. If you don't agree, please leave it in the comments. But for number 5, I have Underworld Ragehound. 1 in a red for a creature elemental hound at common. Underworld Ragehound attacks each combat if able. He then has Escape for 3 and a red, exile 3 other cards from your graveyard, and he escapes with a +1/+1 counter. So he has escapes as a 4/2. This card is just a really nice aggressive 2-drop for the red decks. It's a 2 mana 3/1. Yeah, he has to attack, but for the most part, he's going to be trading up or trading. Oh, he might trade down for like 1/2s and stuff like that. But he comes back, and for relatively cheap 4 mana, exile 3 other cards. If you don't have any other escape cards, you play him 1000% of the time. He's a recurring threat. He has to be dealt with. I just really like it. I have yet to play this card and be unhappy about it. So that's why he made it to the top 5 for me. I feel like red is not super deep. There's not too many cards here that I would really be happy playing. But he is good. I do like him a lot. Mind you, also, another, obviously, I don't know how many people need to hear this, but if you're getting past red cards, even if red isn't deep, even if you hate red, if you're getting past red, you should be playing that because that's what you're meant to be playing at that seat in the table. So, just putting that out there. Lastly, we're hitting the last top 5, which is going to be the top 5 green cards. So, for number 1, I actually have Warbriar's Blessing. So, it is 1 in a green for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature you control. When Warbriar's Blessing enters the battlefield, enchanted creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. It also says, enchanted creature gets +0/+2. So, it gives your creatures a minor buff. +0/+2 isn't super relevant, but when you're fighting, it can be very relevant. And then it fights the creature, so this is just your standard green removal. Again, you're playing as many of these as you can. Love this card. And number 2, I have Voracious Typhon. Voracious Typhon is 2 green for a creature snake beast at common. It is a 4/4. It also has Escape for 5 green, so for 7 mana. It's a 4 mana 4/4. It escapes as a 7 mana 7/7. Exile 4 other cards from your graveyard because the Voracious Typhon escapes with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. That's where I got the 7 mana 7/7 from. So a 4 mana 4/4 is already a threat, and then if they answer it, it comes back as a bigger threat. This is a great card. I love this. Again, I have never played this card and not been happy about it because I've seen my opponent go, oh, remove it. And I go, okay, next turn, or whenever I can, like maybe I play it on turn 4, then turn 5, whatever. But like, I've played it turn 8, 9, 10 as a 4/4, they remove it. Next turn, bring it back as a 7/7, and like, you know, you look and I'm like, hey, do you have more removal? Because if not, this game isn't going to last much longer. So again, really like Voracious Typhon. Next up in green is Nyx Herald. Nyx Herald is 2 in a green for an enchantment creature centaur shaman. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target enchanted creature or enchantment creature you control gets +1/+1 against trample until end of turn, including itself. It can target itself, so at the beginning of combat, it becomes a 3 mana 3/4 with trample. This is just a good card. Yeah, it's 2 in a green. I don't know if I read this. 2 in a green enchantment creature. So it's an enchantment creature for enchantment synergies. It's a 3 mana 2/3 that gives something else +1/+1 and trample. If you don't have any other if you have another enchantment creature. If you don't, it's a 3 mana 3/4 with trample. So this is just fucking awesome. This is, you know, if it's a creature deck you're playing in, I guess if you're being controlling, you won't want it. But if you're playing any sort of creature deck, you're playing as many copies of Nyx Herald as you can get a copy of. Number 4, I have Renata, Called to the Hunt. She is 2 green for a legendary enchantment creature demigod at uncommon. Her power is equal to her devotion to green. So on her own, she's a 4 mana 2/3. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This just develops so much value throughout the game. You all know how much I loved Grumgully from Throne of Eldraine. This is 4 mana Grumgully, but better because her power can be higher than a 3/3. It can even be a 4/3, 5/3, 6/3. And she gives everything, not just non-human creatures, everything a +1/+1 counter when it enters the battlefield. If you saw my first video on Grumgully, you'll know why this card would be so good. So I don't think I'm going to talk about it too much. It's just good. It gives you a lot of value early and late. Whenever you really play creatures, they just come in +1/+1 bigger. And lastly, I have Loathsome Chimera at number 5. Loathsome Chimera is a 2 and a green creature chimera, a 4/1, with escape for 4 and a green. Exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Loathsome Chimera escapes with a +1/+1 counter on it, so it escapes as a 5/2. So a 3 mana 4/1, at first you're like, that's not great, that trades down significantly, but it goes really, really well in the red-green archetype of 4 toughness, 4 power matters. It then keeps escaping for relatively cheap, 5 mana and 3 other cards, and it comes back as a 5/2. It becomes a threat that they actually have to deal with, so that's why I've been seeing it played a lot. And every time it's like a groan. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh shit! I need to find a way to deal with this thing. So it's just, and whenever I play it, I'm happy about it too. So at first, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I've become a huge fan of Loathsome Chimera. And again, I think you should be playing it in your decks. So that's it for the top 5 in every color. Now we're gonna go through each color pair. So what we're gonna do is start each color pair by talking about its uncommon signpost card. So we're going to start with black-white. The uncommon is going to be Rise to Glory. Rise to Glory is 3 white-black for a sorcery. Choose one or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So 5 mana, get a creature back to the battlefield is not super playable. You shouldn't be playing that for the most part, unless you're in a very, very, very grindy deck, which black-white is. It's pretty grindy, but even then, it's not super playable. Here's the big one. One or both, remember. Return target aura card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is the other mode. So now you're telling me for 5 mana, I can get back my 2 or 3 drop, or even 5 or 6 drop, depending on how late the game is. And I can get back a Dreadful Apathy, Mire's Grasp. I mean, hell, even the 2 mana aura in white, the Heliod's Punishment, which isn't great removal, but if you're getting that back for 5 mana and hitting another creature with it, you are over the moon happy with this card. So the top cards that are in this color pair that I would be going for are Heliod's Pilgrim, because it's just grabbing your removal out of your deck. We already talked about it. Inevitable End. We haven't talked about that card yet, so I will talk about it now. Inevitable End is 2 and a black for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. So either the game here is they either sacrifice the creature that got hit, or they sacrifice something else and keep the creature that this got hit with, but next turn it will activate again, making them sacrifice more, so it becomes a domino effect kind of thing. And this archetype, this card is really strong because it's an aura, so Heliod's Pilgrim gets it, and it comes back with Rise to Glory. Just, again, when you're recurring it, this card, like, by itself, it's playable. When you're recurring it, it's great. And lastly, I have Elspeth's Nightmare here, which we haven't talked about yet, so I'll say it now. It is a saga, an enchantment saga for 2 and a black. Chapter 1. Destroy target creature and opponent controls with power 2 or less. So, obviously you might side this out if you see your opponent's not playing many creatures with power 2 or less that really matter. But it has more chapters. Chapter 2, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, and they discard it. So that's like a duress. And then exile target opponent's graveyard. That's actually pretty useful in this format full of escape creatures. Why do I like this card? Because white-black is very controlling and very grindy. So you hit a 2-power creature, you get one of their removals out of their hand if they have any, and you exile their graveyard. That's exactly what you want to be doing in a very controlling, grindy deck. So, real big fan of that card. That's what I'd be looking for in those colors. Other than, obviously, what I said, like, you should be taking Drag to the Underworld above Elspeth's Nightmare, just so you guys know. And Inevitable End. I'm putting mostly cards I haven't spoken about, unless I really need to, like, reiterate how good a card is in a specific archetype, like Heliod's Pilgrim. I feel like in black-white, Heliod's Pilgrim is going to be at its best. So that's why I said it. But like I said, you should be taking, like, your great removal and stuff over this stuff. I'm just telling you, like, this isn't a perfect order. These are just cards you should be keeping your eye out for when you're in a certain color pair more often than not. So, blue-white. That's the next color pair. The uncommon is Staggering Insight. Let me pull it up really quickly. Where are you? So, Staggering Insight. One blue and one white for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has lifelink, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If you were playing during Ixalan times, you know that Curious Obsession was the literal worst thing ever. This is Curious Obsession, but for 2 mana, and it gives it lifelink. You put this on a flyer, you start drawing infinite cards. It's really good. So, blue-white is a little rough to evaluate. Why? This card, Staggering Insight, is very good, but I feel like it's not a super strong archetype. Like, the cards, there's, like, in the colors, it might be very strong, but the archetype doesn't really know what it wants to do. It's kind of hard to figure out, so you need to play it by ear. If you're seeing a lot of aggressive cards, you could go blue-white aggro flyer, flyers that are just dealing and trying to gain some life, or you could go blue-white like control and put this on your big finisher, like maybe if you have a Dream Trawler, the 6 mana 3/5 that draws cards, it makes itself hexproof. It's stupid. That's an archetype of itself of blue-white is pick Dream Trawler, pack 1, pick 1, and go blue-white and force it. Just so you guys know. So the cards I'm going to be going over are, I really like Sunmane Pegasus in this deck. I already talked about it in white, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I just think it's a really strong card in this deck. The next two I haven't spoken about yet. So the next one that I have here is Stern Dismissal. I've spoken about this card before in videos. I'm going to talk about it again, why I think it's so good. 1 mana instant, return target creature or enchantment an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So it is worse than Unsummon, because Unsummon hit any creature and put it, but it could hit any, either whether you controlled it or not. So it was a good response to removal. This can't do that. However, in a set full of auras, they go to put an Iroha's Blessing on one of their creatures and deal 4 damage to you, or a creature you control. And for 1 mana, you take it out from under them. I love this card. Mind you, don't play 3 copies of it, I would play 1 or 2 in the right deck. 2 is already pushing it. But I think this card is much better than people think it is. Especially in this set. So we have that. After Stern Dismissal, I have for this deck Daybreak Chimera. Daybreak Chimera. Let me read it for you really quickly. And sorry if I forget to read cards, but I will have them on screen, so please feel free to read them for yourself. Daybreak Chimera is 3 white for a creature Chimera, at common. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is your devotion to white. It's a 3/3 flyer. So, in the early game, it's like a 4/3 mana maybe, at most, flyer. In the late game, it could easily be just a 2 white, like white 3/3 flyer. Which, in this, like, blue-white deck, I feel like is strong. I can't tell you I've drafted blue-white too much yet, though. But I think it's a pretty solid card, especially in that archetype. Like, it's already a solid card just in white in general, so. After that, we're going to be going into red-white. The red-white uncommon is Hero of the Nyxborn. So let me pull that up for you guys. Hero of the Nyxborn is 1 red-white for an enchantment creature human soldier at uncommon. When Hero of the Nyxborn enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Also, whenever you cast a spell that targets Hero of the Nyxborn, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So essentially, it has the heroic mechanic on it. So what you want to be doing in this deck is like aggro with that hero synergy, those heroic synergies. So you want to be playing all the cards that have heroic. You want to be playing cards that target creatures. So the cards that I have here, at number 1, I really, really like Commanding Presence in this deck. So Commanding Presence is a, sorry, let me find it. I suck. Where are you? Where are you? Oh, here you go. 3 and a white for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has first strike. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 human soldier creature token. So it goes wide, which is what you want to do in this deck. It targets the creature. It gives the creature +2/+2 in first strike. This is everything you want to be doing in red white. After that, I actually have a red card. I really, really like Heroes of the Revel in this deck. Heroes of the Revel are 4 and a red for a creature satyr soldier. When Heroes of the Revel enter the battlefield, create a 1/1 red satyr creature token with this creature can block. It then has the heroic mechanic strapped to it. All other creatures, when this gets targeted, gets +1/+0. So again, it's a 5 mana. For 5 mana, you get 5/5 worth of stats, which is okay. And then it has heroic on one of it. So that way you can make it and kind of spread the damage across all your creatures. Again, going wide and heroic, which is what you want to be doing. Lastly, I want to go over a card in white that I feel like is very, very good in this deck. Where is it? Did I miss it? Sorry. Scryfall is... There it is. Indomitable Will. 1 and a white for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+2. So it has flash, so it's a combat trick. So essentially what this could do in your deck is you swing in, right? And you have all your 1/1s, all your small creatures, and your couple creatures with heroic. You let them make all their blocks. Whichever was going to be the biggest blowout with a heroic creature, you put it Indomitable Will on it at instant speed. So that creature gets +1/+2 and probably survives and wins that combat. And then gives all the other creatures +1/+0. Meaning that combat will probably end horribly for your opponent. So this is just your bread and butter common in red-white. You want to take as many of these as you can. Good card. Just essentially a combat trick that sticks around. So already solid. Now for green-white, your uncommon is going to be Siona, Captain of the Pairings, I think is how you say it. She's 1 green-white for a legendary creature human soldier. She has a lot of text, so bear with me here. When Siona, Captain of the Pairings, enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of your library. That's a lot of cards. You may reveal an aura card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. So she's a 3 mana 2/2 that cares about auras. This deck is a constellation deck. You want to be getting auras specifically, but in general, just enchantments are good. And getting value out of it. So, for those colors, I have... I really, really like Setessan Training in this deck. Setessan Training is, if I can find it, 1 and a green for an enchantment aura. So Siona finds it. Enchant creature you control. Once Setessan Training enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it cantrips, and then it gives the creature +1/+0 and trample. So I've already seen people playing Nessie and Boar, the 5 mana 10/6, and then making it an 11/6 with trample. Gets really stupid really quickly. So that goes well in your deck. All your constellation synergies, buffs a creature a little bit, draws you a card. Beyond that, there's also Loathsome Chimera I really like in that deck. Just because it's one of the only recurable threats you'll be getting. You can keep recurring that creature and getting it back. So I really like that. But that just goes for in general in green. And then lastly, Sentinel's Eyes. I don't consider it an amazing card, but in this deck, it's very playable on 1 mana, +1/+1. And here, let me read it for you guys. Where are you? Sorry, because I know I haven't talked about it yet. So for 1 white mana, enchantment aura, enchant creature, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 in vigilance, and then it escapes for 1, exile 2 other cards from your graveyard. So it's really cheap escape, so you can keep getting your constellation synergies. Feels like it goes really, really well in this deck. Excuse me. Next up, we have black-blue. First of all, let's read the uncommon before I start giving my opinions on black-blue. The uncommon, the signpost uncommon, is Devourer of Memory. Costs 1 blue, 1 black for a creature, nightmare, and uncommon. Whenever one or more cards are put into your are put into your graveyard from your library. Devourer of Memory gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked. So a 3/2 unblockable. And then for 1 blue-black, put the top card of your library into your graveyard. Yeah, this card is good. For 2 it's a 2-mana 2/1. That then on turn 3, you can go put the top card, just 1, from my library into my graveyard, which fuels Escape, which then gives this +1/+1. It then can't be blocked. You hit with it, and now you can keep going and doing that process. So I think you guys know what you want to be doing here. It's essentially blue-black control, but with like a self-mill sub-theme in it that you can go for if you'd like. The important cards here that I have are... Let me try to find it for you. At number 1, I have Mire Triton. If I can find it really quickly. Oh, sorry, I'm looking in blue. It's in black. Here we go. My apologies. Mire Triton. 1 and a black mana for a creature zombie merfolk. It's a 2/1 with Death Touch, and when it enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you gain 2 life. So in the early game, it's a 2/1 for 2 mana with Death Touch. That gains 2 life, which is solid. In the late game, it's a 2/1 with Death Touch that blocks your biggest creature. It fuels Escape, and you gain 2 life. And activates any other self-mill synergy you might have, which shouldn't be many, but it's still just really good in that grindy controlling deck. Next up, I have Venomous Hierophant, which is just the bigger version of the same thing. It is 3 and a black for a creature Gorgon Cleric. It is a 3/3 with Death Touch, and when it enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Same exact thing, it just doesn't gain the life. Obviously, it's more cards, but I mean like in the same way it affects the game. It's a 3/3 Death Touch that stops most creatures. It fuels Escape, might put escape creatures into your graveyard. All around solid card. Lastly, this is a card I actually talked to someone about, and I thought it was really, really interesting, the interactions you can do with this card. So, I have, at number 3, Shimmerwing Chimera. 3 and a blue for an enchantment creature Chimera at uncommon. It's a 3/2 flyer, so that's already playable in a control deck as kind of like one of your creatures that'll deal some damage. At the beginning of your upkeep, return up to 1 target enchantment you control to its owner's hand. You can return Omen of the Seas with this. You can return Omen of the Dead with this. You can get a ton of value. And one combination I saw that was really interesting is Aspect of Lamprey, that 4 mana enchantment that makes them discard 2 and gives it lifelink. You play it on this, give it lifelink, they discard 2, you hit, so now you're dealing 3 and gaining 3, and on your upkeep, bounce it back to your hand, play it, make them discard 2 again. It's a very strong combo. So I feel like that goes really well in that deck as well. We're almost done here. I think we have 5 more color pairs, and I'm going to try to get through them a little quickly because I understand this video is going longer than I expected. So I have here in blue-red, the uncommon is Mischievous Chimera. Let me pull it up here. So Mischievous Chimera is 1 blue, 1 red for a enchantment creature Chimera, 2/2 with flying. So already a 2-mana 2/2 with flying you just play. An enchantment creature you already play. And then it also says, whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, it pings them for 1 and you scry 1. So this deck is a flash deck. You want to be playing instants and creatures of flash. I will say, I do feel like this is a weaker archetype in general. I feel like the payoffs aren't that incredibly strong. But regardless, it's good. If you get enough Mischievous Chimeras, you should be playing it. You know, you play what's in your seat. But for this deck, I feel like the 3 most important cards are, number 1, Naiad of the Hidden Coves. So Naiad of the Hidden Coves is a 2 and a blue mana for an enchantment creature nymph. It's a 2/3, so it's kind of like a more controlling card. As long as it's not your turn, spells you control cost 1 less to cast. So this makes all your flash and instant speed stuff cheaper. Bread and butter for your deck. You want these, probably not more than 2 or 3 though. The next 2 are both payoffs in red for going blue-red instant speed trickery. So next I have Arena Trickster, 3 and a red for a creature human shaman at common. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Arena Trickster. So this is one of your payoffs. It becomes huge. But this is why I feel like this is probably one of the better payoffs, but all it takes is 1 green mana to get a 1/1 death touch on the field, and then your Arena Trickster is useless. So that's why I'm not the biggest fan of this archetype. But beyond that, the next one that I have is Dreamstalker Mana Core. 2 and a red for an enchantment creature Mana Core. When you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, Dreamstalker Mana Core deals 1 damage to any target. So this can ping them for 1, but can also hit their creatures if you'd like to. Then it's a 3 mana 4/2 enchantment creature. It has its synergies. You do you can do stuff with this deck. Just you need to have a lot of payoffs and a lot of instant speed stuff. There's not much room for fodder in this deck. So either all your stuff is instant speed or payoffs, and like a good mix of both. Next up, I have Black Red. The uncommon for Black Red is, let me find it. It is a black and a red for Slaughter Priest of Mogus. It's a creature, Minotaur Shaman, and uncommon. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. It's a 2/2. So whenever you sack any permanent with any ability, it becomes a 4/2. However, for 2 mana, you can sacrifice another creature. This is on the card. And it gains first strike until end of turn. And by the way, sacrifice any other creature or enchantment. So that's the only way the ability on this will work. However, the +2/+0, not the first strike, is with any permanent. It doesn't have to be an enchantment or creature. So if it's just something like some random sacrifice energy in your deck, which, in case you haven't guessed, it's sacrifice in this deck, or kind of an aristocrats deck, it gets +2/+0, which is solid. If you use it as the sack outlet, it gets +2/+0 in first strike until end of turn. It's a solid card. I feel like it's good. It's not one of the best ones, but I feel like the archetype itself is really strong. Red-black sacrifice is awesome in this set. So what do you want? You want Anax, whatever you want to call them, Harden the Forge. So whenever you sack your creatures, you're getting more sacrifice fodder. You're getting more 1/1s. So that's great value in this deck. And if you sacrifice it itself, you might get 1 or 2 tokens itself. So all your creatures start replacing themselves. Great card. Already went over it though. The next 2 I haven't gone over. So the next one I have is Soul Reaper of Mogus. 2 and a black for an enchantment creature Minotaur Shaman. A 2/3. And it just says, for 2 and a black, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. This is one of the better sack outlets. It's expensive. It's 3 mana. But you can hold up 3 mana. If they go to remove a creature, it can sacrifice itself. You sacrifice it, get a card out of the exchange. So this is just one of your bread and butter commons in black-red. The other one that I have is in red. Where are you? It is called Final Flare. So 2 and a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature and enchantment. Final Flare deals 5 damage to target creature. This is already playable in most red decks. 3 mana deal 5, but you have to sack something is solid. But think about it. It says additional cost is a creature or enchantment. So earlier in the game, if you played an Omen of the Forge, you could play this and sack the Omen of the Forge to deal the 5 damage. And then if you have your, uncommon Mogus, what's this called? Slaughter Priest of Mogus, that guy gets +2/+0 because you did this effect. So it's pretty strong. It's pretty synergistic, the whole deck. Next up, I have Black Green, which I've heard I haven't done it myself, but I've heard is very, very strong in this format. So the uncommon is Acolyte of Affliction. 2 black green for a creature human cleric at uncommon. When Acolyte of Affliction enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. You may, it's a may ability, return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So if you don't want to keep up escape stuff, you don't have to, but you can just get stuff back into your hand. It is a grindy, graveyard synergistic deck. So cards I like in this deck, again, like I said, you take your removal, do not, but I'm saying cards you probably will value higher in this deck. are going to be Chainweb Arachneer. It's a 1 green mana for a creature spider with reach. It's a 1/2. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature with flying and opponent controls. So it'll take out a X1 flyer, but then it escapes for 3 green and exile 4 of the cards, and it comes back with 3 +1/+1 counters. So now it's a 4/5, right? So it becomes like a little bit better than a Mammoth Spider, and then it still does the effect again if it wants to deal damage to a flyer. This deck is grindy. It wants defensive creatures like this. This card goes in it rather well. Next up, I have the card Funeral Rites. Funeral Rites, let me, if I can find it, is 2 and a black for a sorcery. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Again, goes really, really well in this deck. It's kind of that grindy theme that you want cards in hand, you want cards in the graveyard, you don't mind losing 2 life to do that. Sounds good. And then I have Gary in this deck too. He's just like, that grindy deck, you're at a board stall, you're in parity, suddenly you play a Gary and you drain them for 8 damage. So, Gary's just really good in that deck. It's happened to me, I've gotten shredded by Gary multiple times, I have personal beef with that man. But, that being said, sorry. Next up is blue-green. So Simic. In blue-green, your uncommon is going to be Eutropia, the Twice Favored. She's 1 green-blue for a legendary creature human wizard. Actually, I don't know if it's a she or a he. Whatever they identify as, I guess. It is a legendary creature human wizard, a 2/2, so a 3-mana 2/2, but with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until end of turn. This card is great. This is a Constellation deck. You want to have enchantments. You want to be using your enchantments to get Constellation synergy and value out of them. So cards in this deck, you want Setessan Training. Already went over that. 2 mana +1/+0, trample. It's an enchantment. It draws you a card. Great card. Thirst for Meaning. Already went over that card. Really easy to just 3 mana, instant speed, draw 3, discard 1 with all the enchantments you have in the deck. And then also Shimmerwing Chimera. I mentioned earlier, 4 mana 3/2 flyer that it bounces some of those enchantments back to hand for more Constellation synergies. It's a very it's almost like a combo deck. I wouldn't call it a combo deck, but it's almost there. And now our last archetype is green-red. So the uncommon in green-red, if you saw me do my pre-release, you know this card, is Warden of the Chain. It's a 1 green-red for a creature Minotaur Warrior. It is a 3 mana 4/4 with trample, but it can't attack unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. So the whole deck wants to have power 4 or greater. By the way, Warden of the Chain is a good card, but it didn't have the best showing in our last video, but I still think it's a pretty solid card. It's a 3 mana 4/4, and when it does attack, it's a 4/4 with trample. It's what you want to be doing in this deck. You want all your creatures to have power 4 or greater. So we're going to have all 3 of these are payoffs, and good payoffs in the colors. So the number 1 payoff I have is Furious Rise. That is a 2 and a red enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. And this is play that card, not cast. So you can play lands. It doesn't like Nombo with lands. And you can play it until you exile another card. So you can set it up. It's obviously might be a little expensive, but you can set it up that you don't have a 4 power creature and that just stays in exile and you cast it whenever you want. So it's essentially your red card draw for the deck. This card is even playable in decks that just have a lot of 4 power creatures that aren't in green-red. So, huge, awesome payoff for that deck. Next up, I have Stampede Rider. Stampede Rider is, again, you probably saw this card if you saw my last video. 2 and a red for a creature satyr at common. It's a 2/3 with trample, and at the beginning of each combat, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, including itself if you enchant it somehow, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So by itself, it's a 3 mana 2/3 trampler, which is that's okay. But if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, it's a 3 mana 3/4 trampler, much better. So that's a bread and butter common for that deck. And lastly, we have Nessian Hornbeetle. So that is going to be another one of your bread and butter. I think this is an uncommon, though, if I could find it. It's just a great card in the deck. Yeah, it's an uncommon. It's 1 and a green for a creature insect. The beginning of combat on your turn, if you control another creature with power 4 or greater, play a +1/+1 counter on Nessian Hornbeetle. So by itself, it's a 2-mana 2/2, but pretty quickly I can see it becoming a 2-mana 3/3, a 5/5, even a 6/6. In the green-red deck, this is just great. That's exactly what you want to be doing in that deck. So yeah, that's what I would be playing. And I do feel like it's a strong archetype. But, that being said, that was our last archetype. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you disagree with anything I said, please leave it. I'd love to hear your opinions. If you agree, let me know. Let me know any experiences you guys have had drafting this new set. I've loved it. I love enchantments. I think this new set is a blast. So you guys let me know what you think about the new set, any interesting stories you might have. And remember, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.